Hi guys, welcome. And who dat? I'm Joe, and today we are going to be looking at 5 things to watch for concerning the upcoming 2023 NFL Draft and our beloved, bless you boys, in black and gold, the New Orleans Saints. These are 5 things that I know you've already thought about, but I'm going to break them down and we're going to look at them a little more closely. So, what are the 5 things I'm talking about? Well, first, we're going to look at the Saints and how they love to move up in the draft. Now, we all think about it. We all considered this, right? We're going to take a slightly deeper dive into that. We're not only going to talk about scenarios, but we're also going to attribute point value. So I've looked at the point values chart. And what I've done is I've broken everything down. I've done all the math. And I'm going to present to you a chart. Easy to follow. You don't have to worry about the math. You just have to refer to the chart. And we'll talk about what is realistically possible for the Saints to do, of course, simply based on the point value system of the draft picks. We're also going to look at number 2, what to watch for, the measurables of the Saints' prototypical defensive end. We're going to talk about those measurables and how the Saints have stood steadfast with this philosophy. And I'm going to present to you a list of players in the upcoming draft who fall short of those defensive end minimum measurables. Also, number 3, what to watch for. We're going to take a look at the Senior Bowl players. We know that the Saints every year fall in love with Senior Bowl players. Typically, they'll draft half of their class or maybe even more Senior Bowl players. It's a good way for the Saints to look at these players, and we're going to take a deeper dive into that. I'm going to show you the list of all 69 players who participated. The 4th thing for us to watch concerning the upcoming draft and our beloved bless you boys, we're going to look at the oldest players on the roster. I think anybody that's 28 years old or older, it's someone that you have to consider. I've broken the players down by position, and how many do you think are 28 years old or older? Well, there's 19 players on this team so far that are 28 or older, and that's of last week. Many more will turn 28 between now and the start of the season. So we'll take a look at those players and we'll look at the positions. And then finally, what to watch for, number 5, Saints players who are currently under contract but only have 1 year left on the current contract. How many players do you think that is? I think you'd be surprised to know it's 29. And we're going to look at those players and focus on those positions too. This is one of those videos you might want to put in your watch later because I've done all the work for you and you can refer to 5 different issues in this one video easily presented for you. You are welcome. Here we go. Number 1, the Saints love to trade up. So what is realistically what the Saints are going to do? Well, they're probably going to trade up. They haven't traded back since 2007. They love to trade up in the first round, and they will trade up all throughout the draft. I've seen the Saints run out of draft picks and then all of a sudden pop up again because they traded future picks so they could jump back in. That might have been what they did when they grabbed Thomas Morstead, the punter. The Saints are capable of doing anything. And this list of options that the Saints have is based on the points charts, the value that is given to the different draft picks. Now, teams go by this chart, but we know that it's all preferential and situational and everything else. So for all we know, the Saints could trade future assets, current assets, and do some crazy move and end up getting some small school cornerback or something like that in the first round. And, you know, it'll probably make you nervous. The Saints move up. Who are they going to get? Well, we're going to look at just what we know as far as the point value goes. I think it's a good grounding point, and we can make our hypothesis from this. So first, let's look at the point value of the top 10 picks in this year's draft. All right. Oh, that's some big numbers there. First overall, 3,000 points. Pretty good stuff. You get down to the 10th pick, 1,300 points. I mean, a lot of points. Well, here's the Saints' current draft picks and what those points are. And as you can see, our first round pick is worth 640 points. It's a far cry from the 3,000, right? Those are all of the picks the Saints have currently and the value of each of those picks. Now, I'm going to pull up this big chart. Everything to the left, that's picks 1 through 29. The team picking and the point value for each pick. All the way from 1 leading up to our lowly little 29 pick there, 640 points. All right. On the right side, we have a plethora, a myriad, if you will, of different possible trade options for the Saints. Easy for you to see, and now I'm going to talk about these options. The first one is trading our first round pick this year plus a first round pick next year. Now, this is the hardest one to determine. I do not know if there is a set allocation of points for a future first rounder. If Kansas City wants to trade their future first round pick, I'm going to assume it's going to be the last pick in the first round, and I'm going to assume it's worth 600 points. If the Houston Texans want to trade their first round pick next year, I may assume that's worth 3,000 points. That's a big discrepancy. So the only way I'm going to be fair about it, the Saints are typically, I think in the eyes of everyone, including Vegas and probably the rest of the league, we're a middle of the road team. I think starting in the middle is a fair thing to do. There's 32 picks usually in the first round, so I'm going to look at pick 16. That's halfway. That's the middle. That's 1,000 points. So I'm going to suggest that a future first round pick for the Saints is worth 1,000 points. So that's where that first figure comes in. Our first this year plus a first in 2024, that gets you 1,640 points, and that is equivalent to or close to pick 6 in the draft. Detroit has pick 6 in the draft. That's 1,600 points. So you see what I'm doing there. 1,640 points is the total of first rounder this year, first rounder next year. That could move up to number 6. That's how I've done this. The little number in the parentheses over there is your projected round you could get up to. So there you go. If the Saints combine all 8 picks in this year's draft, that comes out to an equivalent of maybe the 7th round or 8th round, or 7th pick or the 8th pick in the first round. So, yeah. If you want to do a Mike Ditka thing and trade everything away, you might be able to get up to the 7th pick. Okay. You want to keep your 2/5 and 2/7 and just trade your 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th? You can do that and get up to number 8. Now, bear in mind, Atlanta has number 8, so typically, if it's equal to number 8, chances are we'd probably be trading up to number 9, unless Atlanta wants to take all those picks from us. If we combine our first round pick, our second round pick, and our third round pick, that can get us up to pick 9. If we trade our first and our second round pick, we can move up to pick 14. That's currently held by New England. And so this is a nice little chart to follow. If a player the Saints love falls to New England at number 14, we could trade our first and second round pick, and based on the point chart, it's a feasible trade. How about we just trade our first round pick and our third round pick? That is something I think is likely to happen. If the Saints are in love with someone and they fall out of that top 18, top 19, we can trade a first rounder and a third rounder this year, move up to 19. Of course, Tampa Bay has the 19th overall pick, so we'll probably have to move up to 20. But yeah, that's a likely possibility. I think any of these options are likely because the Saints are notorious for trading up, but I wouldn't mind trading a first and a third, moving up to 20 and grabbing, like, let's say, Kalijah Kancey, one of the only pass rushing interior defensive tackles scheduled to go in the first round. So that's a scenario I think is likely. We could combine our first round pick and our fourth round pick and move up to 26. So a first and a four can move us up 3 spots. We can trade a fifth round pick with our first round pick and move up to 28. If we want to guarantee we get our guy and we just want to move up 1 spot with Cincinnati, we can give away a fifth round pick. We can give away both our fifth round picks with our first rounder and possibly move up to Buffalo or even Dallas if they're willing to deal. So that's the point values. Nobody's broken it down like this before. And so when you're sitting there thinking about what could the Saints possibly trade to move up, this is how it is based on the points system. And then after that, it's between the two teams. That's a chart you might want to hold on to and refer to. You don't want to have to do the math for yourself every time you go to a draft pick point value chart. All right, number 2, thing to watch for, the defensive end measurables. The Saints have a minimum. They will not draft you and expect you to play defensive end if you're below these minimums. Now, they make an exception when it comes to height. If you're a proven player, so Colin Saunders is 6'1", all right, but he's a proven player. He's proven, despite that height coming in below the average, even below the minimum of what the Saints require for a defensive lineman or defensive end. Colin Saunders has proven himself in this league. They will take a chance every now and then. A late round draft pick or free agents, they will go below the minimum because it's a low risk. But these are the measurables. On average, when the Saints draft a defensive lineman, specifically defensive end, on average, they are 6'4", 268 pounds. They can bulk up another 10 or 15 pounds and be perfect. They can stay a little slim if they're going to stay on the outside all the time. But at a minimum, the Saints will draft someone that's 6'2", 252 pounds. All right, these are the measurables. The Saints also have an athletic requirement, and they like athletes. And this is something that I'm not too familiar with as far as the draft picks go. I haven't studied all of them like this. I'm focusing just on the measurables. As far as athleticism goes, that's gonna help their case as far as the Saints drafting them too. And of course, if they're below the minimum at defensive end or edge rusher, their athleticism will help their case to transition to linebacker. So what I've done is I've compiled a list of players who are below the defensive end minimum measurable standard at defensive end edge rusher for the Saints. In this top box here are the players that are below the minimum, and these are below weight. So these guys, I'm not saying the Saints won't draft them. What I'm saying is they won't play defensive end for the Saints unless they add 15 to 20 pounds. And in the case of these players, the only one that's even close to the minimum of weight is B.J. Ojulari. I think his weight is 251 or 250. So Ojulari could be, right there. And then he would probably be asked to lose 10 or 15 pounds and play linebacker, maybe even more, 20 pounds. or he'd be asked to add 20 pounds so he can last on a defensive line. So of all of these players, Nolan Smith, Will McDonald, you got Herberg, Parrish, Ramirez, all of these guys are below the Saints' minimum requirements. But they could just play linebacker. They could be signed and asked to lighten up and play linebacker. Nolan Smith is a force, and we've all seen that he is very athletic and capable of playing linebacker in this league. I just wanted to give you a nice little list, show you easily. These are the players, some of the top-rated players who fall below that minimum weight requirement for the Saints. These guys in this big box up top are going to have to lose some weight or gain a lot of weight if the Saints are going to draft them. Now, the 5 players in the lower box, these guys are right at the defensive end minimum, right at it. So, in the case of Young, Mathis, Henry, Cox, Baldonado, these guys are right there. It's not out of the realm of possibility for the Saints to draft these guys. I just thought it'd be interesting to not only talk about the measurables, but to give you a list of people who actually are below these measurables. On average, when the Saints draft an edge rusher, they will be 6'4", 268 pounds. There's a lot of good edge rushers in this draft who are 270, right around that range of 6'3", 270. So a lot of them. So, but these are the ones that fall below the minimum. Just something to think about when you're considering who the Saints are going to take this year in the draft. Let's focus on the thing to watch for, number 3, the Senior Bowl. Wow. We all know the Saints love Senior Bowl players, and a lot of times when we're talking about potential draft picks for the Saints, you're hoping that whoever's talking about them mentions whether they were at the Senior Bowl or not. Hey, if you mention the Senior Bowl, you might remember a few of them. They were 69 players that participated in the Senior Bowl, and that's a big list. So what I've decided to do in this video is to show you the offensive players that participated and the defensive players that participated. I'll pull up the list, and you can come back to this video and refer to it if you would like it, as well as all these other lists that I've compiled for you. Keep this video in your watch later for the next 2 weeks. It'll be a good reference point for you. Here are those offensive players. Now, the Saints love Senior Bowl players. The deal is you got the college film, you watch that. You've got the scouting report. You can trust your scouts. You've got interviews. You can go and visit players. Then you have the 30 players who actually come to your facility and get worked out. All of these chances to learn about a player. But in the Senior Bowl, the Saints tend to have several coaches involved during that entire week of preparation. I think this year the Saints had 3 or 4 coaches there. So you get to know these 69 players, not only in the scope of working them out and interviewing them and getting to know their personality, but you're also training them for a game and you're coaching them. And you literally get to see how these players react under your tutelage when you direct them to tell them what you want them to do specifically. And then it culminates in a game where they can put what they learned to the test. And I think that's where the Saints' love for Senior Bowl players comes in, because you have actual coaches who are coming back to the facility and saying, I love this guy. We should go after this guy. It's a great way to learn about a player. These are those offensive players. I want to point out at quarterback, Hendon Hooker, Clayton Tune, Jake Haener, Tyson Bagent also. You got Jaren Hall and Max Duggan. So, the Saints know what these guys can do. Tyson Bagent, even though he's from Shepherd, he showed he could make all the throws at the Senior Bowl, right? The Saints love Tennessee. They love Hendon Hooker. Hendon Hooker was there. My eye is on Jake Haener and Clayton Tune. I think of all the film I've watched from these guys, I think they were the 2 most impressive to me. The running backs, Eric Gray, Chris Rodriguez Jr., Tyjae Spears, Kenny McIntosh, Rashawn Johnson, Evan Hull, Chase Brown, Cameron Peoples. I'm not going to go through all of these. I just want to show you these are players who the Saints have worked with for a week. They love Senior Bowl players, and I'm looking at you, Tajay Spears. All those great wide receivers, and the ones I'd like to highlight, Nathaniel Dell, who's 5'8", but he's got some long arms. He plays bigger than 5'8". I'll give him that. He looks more like 5'11" when he's playing. And he's quick, and he's a playmaker. You want size, you got Jonathan Mingo. I think Dontavian Wicks is a sleeper here from Virginia. Xavier Hutchinson's got good size, too. Michael Wilson's decent size. Elijah Higgins out of Stanford may not get drafted, or he may get drafted by the Saints because they may reach for that kid. I think they like Jalen Wayne from South Alabama, too. At tight end, Cameron Latu, Luke Musgrave, Josh Wiley from Cincinnati. Josh Wiley's a freak. He'll have to learn how to run block. Most of these guys probably will. And then your offensive linemen, so the tackles, guards, and centers are all mixed in there. But Steve Avila was there, Torrance was there, John Michael Schmidt was there, Tyler Steen was there. I love Sal DeVere. I love Wayne Morris, Wayne Morris, Warren McClendon. Love Jalen Duncan, Blake Freeland, Cody Mauch, whatever you say. And the kid from Michigan, whose name I'm not going to try to pronounce. A lot of good players here. Saints got to watch them. Those are your offensive players. Let's pull up the Senior Bowl defensive players. All right. A lot of good players here. Adebaware, Carl Brooks, Gerard Clark, these defensive linemen from small schools. Then you've got some guys I'm really excited about. Keon White out of Georgia Tech. That's one to look for. He is a guy we probably have on our radar. Isaiah Foskey. Does he go in the first round? Does he fall? Well, he fits what we like. KJ Henry's pretty good. Tyler Lacey out of Oklahoma State. I'm excited about. Cameron Young's not too bad. You got both the Byron Youngs that participated. The guy from Tennessee's a little on the minimum size, and then Alabama's Byron Young. I think he can kick inside and outside, so that's something to look for. Jalen Redmond, not a lot of hoopla around him out of Oklahoma. He could be a late round pick. Isaiah McGuire out of Mizzou. He's a defensive end that fits. Zach Pickens. If we don't get Mozzie Smith or another big interior guy, Zach Pickens is a guy in the mid rounds we can look at. DJ Dale out of Alabama, and he might not get drafted at all, but he's got a motor. Those linebackers, you see a lot of them there, edge rushers on our draft boards, and like I said, fall below the minimum. So, of course, at the Senior Bowl, they were being tried out at linebacker. Did Will McDonald show up at linebacker? Did Andre Carter out of Army show he can transition the linebacker? You got Ivan Pace Jr. out of Cincinnati, who is a little shorter than we like, but God, he's a good player. And that's someone the Saints got to look at. Isaiah Land is a light guy. Nick Hampton's pretty light. Deion Henley, a lot of people got him going early, got him going quick. I like Aubrey Miller out of Jackson State as well. And then those DBs, I have the cornerbacks and safeties all together. I've got my eye on small school guys here. I didn't like the tape on Kelly out of Stanford. But, we'll see what the Saints say. They know more than I do. Jacorian Bennett out of Maryland. You got Luter out of South Alabama. Sacramento State's Marty Mapu. A lot of good players to choose from that we were able to get a good look at. Christopher Smith out of Georgia. No, right. I'm trying to keep my cat off the computer. I'm sorry. Sidney Brown out of Illinois, Ronnie Hickman, Jartavius Martin, Tyreek Stevenson, Anthony Johnson out of Virginia. Those are guys I got my eyes on. The Senior Bowl players. There's the list. Come back to this video and pull that list up anytime you want a quick reference. Now, let's talk about the number 4 thing to watch for in the draft, and that is players who are old on our roster. Now, 28 is not terribly old. I picked 28 as a good spot because as of last week, we have 19 players on our team that are 28 years old or older. And by the time the season starts, that list is going to increase for sure with Alvin Kamara because he turns 28 in July. So let's pull up that list. 19 players that are 28 years old or older. Both of our quarterbacks, Carr, Winston, well, you know, age is as far as quarterback goes, you know, hopefully you can play till you're 36 or 40, right? Both of Williams at 28 for running back, and then Derek Gore. Both of them are 28. 28's not bad, but at running back, you know, we've got Williams, Darrell Williams, to a 4-year contract, so he'll be 32 when this contract ends. I like 28 as a spot here because when you draft a rookie, typically it's a 4-year contract. So if you're 28 years old now, by the time that rookie reaches the end of his deal, a lot of these guys will be, you know, past their prime. And that's the reason why I wanted to pull him up. You know, it's a quick, easy chart to look at to see where age could be a factor when drafting this year. We just re-signed Kirkwood at wide receiver. He's 28. Look at those offensive linemen. 3 tackles. Hurst, Ramczyk, Norton. All 28 or older. Guard Andres Pete, who's in his last year. He's 29 already. The old man, Cam Jordan at 33, and that even older guy at linebacker, Demario Davis at 34. Those are ages you got to look for. You got to watch out for, you know. In a couple of years from now, Jordan and Davis will have to be replaced. Do you want to wait till the year Cam and Davis decide they're both retiring and then have to go and get a defensive end or a linebacker that can replace these guys? Safety as well. Both Matthew and May are 30 years old. A couple of years from now, those guys may lose an even bigger step. And our kicker and our punter. Okay, so I think the biggest takeaway from this, besides being a quick reference to you, is that we do need to get young at offensive tackle. It's something that, you know, a lot of people don't expect us to draft because we have so many tackles, good tackles. But I do. I expect us to draft one because I expect us to get better at that 4th tackle position. I don't know what we're going to get out of Trevor Penning as a starter. James Hurst may be needed to play a backup guard position if we don't address that. So I think tackle is an important thing, and here's another consideration for it, the age, as well as safety. We have a bunch of backup safeties. We just signed a bunch of guys. Keep in mind, 1-year contracts. Those are the 19 players currently who are 28 years old or older on this team. And the last thing to watch for are those 1-year contracts. 29 players have 1 year left on their current contract. And here's the list. And it's a big one. And I've got them broken down by position, and I think you can see the position that jumps out at you on this list. Wide receiver. Wow. We have 8 wide receivers on contract right now, and 6 of them have 1 year left on their contract or 1 year on their contract. 6 out of our 8 receivers will be free agents after this year. Look at those DBs. Same thing. The cornerback, Isaac Yiadom, who's a great special teamer, and we just re-signed him to a 1-year deal. He may make this roster, which is crazy because, you know, we want upgrades, and I don't know if Yadam is going to make it as a quarterback, but we love him as a special teamer and a gunner. And three of those safeties that we just signed, pardon me, three of those DBs that can go from safety to cornerback, Abram, Johnson, Amadi, all of them 1-year contracts. Our entire special team aces, Will Lutz, Blake Gilliam, Zach Wood, all of them 1 year left. We're going to have to do something with those guys if we're going to keep them, right? Look at the linebackers. Zach Bond's in his last year. Andrew Dowell just re-signed to 1 year. Ty Summers only has 1 year. Old man Cam's in his final year. We're going to have to renegotiate, and that's a tough one. Man's getting older. You don't want to overpay him. You don't want to insult him. I want him to finish his career with the Saints. That's a tough one to negotiate. So not only is this list of players with 1 year left on their contract important as far as the draft goes, it's also important as far as the future of the franchise goes. We know that Michael Thomas is on a 1 year prove it deal. Thomas is 30 years old. Do we re-sign Thomas to a 4-year contract if he stays healthy and plays well this year? And how much will that contract be? So it's not only a question of having 1 year left on the contract as far as let's go draft someone. Like I said, it's what do we do with these players? Rashid Shaheed, young guy, he's an up and comer. How much are we going to pay this guy to give him a contract extension? Are we going to wait for him to blow up this season before we extend him, or do we try to extend him during the year this year? Traquan Smith, Brian Edwards, Keith Kirkwood, Kirk Merritt. I think looking at this list, players with 1 year left, not only Andres Pete, but also Cesar Ruiz, and he could be given a 5th-year option after this year, and it'll be expensive. So I think at some point we negotiate with Ruiz this year. And Andres Pete, I think we'll let him go, and then Throckmorton is a perennial backup. A good list here of players with 1 year left on their contract. That is to help you, to guide you. Those are the 5 things to watch for. You already knew these things. I just wanted to present them to you in easy to follow lists. And you guys enjoy that. Put this video in your watch later and use it in the next 2 weeks. The next time you do a mock draft, if you want to try to predict what the Saints are going to do, keep all of this in mind. Saints love to trade up. They love players from the Senior Bowl. They have specific measurements on defensive ends, defensive linemen in particular. We have a bunch of players that are 28 or older, 19 of them, and 29 players that only have 1 year left on their contract. All those lists are here, and they all factor heavily when considering who the Saints will select in the 2023 NFL Draft, coming up at the end of this month. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Joe. Subscribe to Rosenfield 10 for more Saints videos. Go to playlists, look for New Orleans Saints, and you will find all of those Saints videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later. Who dat?